Hi everyone, I would like to thank you for the invitation and to wish for good health during these challenging times. I'm going to talk about risks and opportunities for young people in the digital era, and I will aim to introduce a cyber-developmental approach to mental health. Around 50 years ago, a massive transition from mechanical and analogic communication to digital media occurred. These include all forms of content which is facilitated via a digital channel that encrypts and translates data. As this mostly occurs through the internet, the terms are often utilized interchangeably. Thus, many suggest that around that time, 50 years ago, the digital revolution, also known as the Third Industrial Revolution, initiated. Approximately 20 years before, the growth of such technologies accelerated, prompting many to define this time as the beginning of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, also known as the digital era and or the Second Coming. This refers to the life-changing innovations in information technology, computer-mediated communication, and new media. Thus, the term digital natives was introduced to describe those who were exposed to the usage of such media prior to their adulthood and distinguish them from digital immigrants, who are those who may have been exposed later in life. The development of the digital natives is the interest of this presentation. Our aim is to describe differences in digital media use, to introduce a cyber-developmental framework for understanding such differences, to delineate the cyber component of this framework, and to introduce case formulation and research implications. Our first aim: contemporary digital media accommodate instrumental, socialization, and entertainment usages aspects. Instrumental aspects involve all uses necessary for one's life: health, education, financial obligations, taxation. Indicatively, the online education market presents at the moment with an annual rate of growth which exceeds 9% and is expected to have a value reaching at over 300 billion USD dollars by 2026. Socialization aspects of digital media. These are commonly known as social media. They serve the distribution of information, opinions, ideas, interests, and expressions across online communities and networks. They occupy a range of areas, including employment, LinkedIn, research, see ResearchGate, romantic relationships, Tinder, friendships, Facebook, and even political activation, see Twitter and Reddit. They may employ instant or asynchronous communication. Social media recorded over 3.5 billion users at the beginning of 2019, a 45% global penetration, which reaches 98% among the more developed nations. One's daily average usage is estimated to be around 2 hours and 16 minutes, which represents 1/7 of one's day, excluding sleep. Significant variations occur considering the activities that one engages with in social media, with certain digital media activities being more engaging than others, such as the posts of videos and photos compared to text posts. Entertainment applications are also popular. These may involve digital games, audiovisual recordings, and access to sexual material. Radical developments occur across all these types. Indicatively, considering the internet or digital games, these tend to be enhanced by naturalistic animations and augmented reality features, which actually means mixing online and offline worlds, such as searching game objects in real-life locations. Remember the game Pokemon Go. Great variability occurs across all these applications. For instance, when it comes to games, we have some games where a gamer plays against the game context, what we call person versus environment games. We have games where different players compete with each other within the game context, multiplayer games or person versus person games. We have games where one is required to develop and customize an in-game character, role, or a persona, role-playing games. The last can be also combined with a multiplayer component, resulting to what we call massively multiplayer online role-playing games. A common game component across all these genres, all these types, is the progressively increasing challenges and rewards that keep one engaged. Nevertheless, games may have different themes, such as real-life stimulation, adventure, racing, etc., to engage different audiences. Within this context, hybrid gamified applications emerge. For instance, Strava uses geocoded data to track an individual cycling and running on a multi-user platform, while allowing for concurrent information sharing. The application allocates trophies and rewards performance, increasing fitness motivation. Aside of Strava, we also have the emergence of a hybrid gamified type of social media, what we call massively multiplayer online virtual reality social platforms, where one presents themselves with an online character persona who moves or has activities with and interacts with others within a virtual context that simulates real life without any game kind of specific target or goal. To conceive the size of the industry, digital games currently exceed 2.7 billion people and record an over 9% increase annually, the gaming market. Figures are quite similar when it comes to online pornography market, which increases by over 15% yearly, and this rate is expected to be maintained till 2027. Alongside the different digital media that one might use, differences occur in terms of how these are used. First, we have geographical differences in the prevalence of digital media usage, with Northern America and Northern Europe reaching 95%, compared to Middle Africa just 12%. Differences occur in the growth of digital media usage uh, across different regions, with Afghanistan growing annually over 142%, and Germany just around 6% for 2019. We have what we call the gender digital divide, with more males using digital media than females, and this divide widening around African nations, and where it reaches 25%. We have gender differences occurring considering one's application of preference, with internet games being mostly preferred by males compared to females. And these internet use trends are steadily skewed towards younger populations globally. Overall, digital natives are strongly inclined to use digital applications such as social media, digital games, forums, and online video channels. Aside of what one is using, differences in terms of usage, we have differences also considering the outcome of one's digital media usage, which is assumed to lie on a continuum from minimum to maximum, where abstinence, moderate, and excessive usage can be seen. So those who abstain, either because they are lacking skills or access, or they are suffering, either because they are lacking skills, or access, they tend to suffer from lower employability, lower income, and lower time resources. Moderate users who may use digital media for their real-life needs tend to benefit across areas like education and employment, while excessive users' well-being is compromised. Such differences regarding the outcome of digital media usage are illustrated consistently in large cohort studies referring to either social media or digital games, online pornography, or even one's academic achievement based on their screen time. For instance, in a large cohort US study, 2018, US teens report that on the bright side of social media, they help them to connect with family and friends, meet others with similar interests, have easier access to information and news, entertain, and express themselves. While on the dark side, the same teens reported that digital media has negatively has been negatively impacting their lives via bullying and rumor spreading, harming relationships and compromising offline contact, cultivating unrealistic views of others, causing addictions and distractions, and enhancing peer pressure. And that brings us to our second aim. So, how should we address this variability in what, how, and with what kind of outcomes a developing individual engages with digital media? In my opinion, literature is on a journey to address this question, supported by evidence provided mostly by the addictions research and the developmental psychology research field. Different models have been proposed in that context. Some models, see Davis 2001, Douglas 2008, and Brand et al. 2016, emphasize mostly on excessive digital media usage and consider primarily risk factors related to the user. These models stem primarily from the addictions literature. On the other side, Livingston and Haddon, 2012, Livingston and colleagues, 2014 and 2018, as well as Peter and Valkenberg and Peter, 2013, have introduced models which emphasize on the whole range of digital media use and abuse behaviors, so not only abuse or problematic use, and take into consideration bioecological developmental principles. These models stem mostly from the area of developmental psychology. So these bioecological developmental principles suggest that to understand individual differences related to digital media usage, one needs to consider the effects related to the biopsychological characteristics of the person, who the user is, the immediate context of the user, the person, peers, family, the combination, which is called microsystem, the combination of microsystems around the person, which is called mesosystem, how one could be influenced by contexts within they may not be directly in contact. Let's say one's father works in IT industry and they are influenced indirectly by the perceptions conveyed within that industry, which is called exosystem. And finally, broader cultural and societal influences, such as the level of digital acceptance or digital penetration within a society, and the public view of digital media or religiosity, which is called macrosystem, as well as the interactive processes developed between all these levels over developmental time and historical time, which is called chronosystem theoretically. At the same time, these models, and especially Sonia Livingstone and Valkenberg and Peter, pose a question. What is it within this cyber world that we need to consider? What's happening within this digital ecology or the online box? For this question to be answered and the journey to continue, I suggest that media psychology evidence should be considered. Media psychology literature indeed has suggested that to optimize our understanding, considering one's digital media usage outcomes, a cyber layer needs to be considered between the person and their microsystem, their immediate context. This was a suggestion from Johnson and Poplambu back in 2008. They initially named that system techno subsystem, but I would suggest that we need to reframe it as a cyber layer. So, what does this cyber layer involve? Which gets us to our third aim. It involves one experience or absorbance by their virtual context and virtual self, and how these two interact with the experience of one's online activity. And all these need to be considered together to understand what this cyber layer involves. So it's the experience of the online world, myself or the user self within that world, and the activity between my virtual self or the reflection of my virtual self and the online context. Let's go one by one. Absorbance by the online context. What is telepresence? The conception of telepresence is defined as a psychological state or a subjective perception in which an individual feels like being in a digital world, because they are overlooking the role of technology, the contribution of technology in that experience. It's a psychological phenomenon that occurs in the human mind and not in a specific technology itself. So we have a user who uses technology to experience the virtual world, and when they fail to acknowledge the mediating role of the technology, they end up experiencing presence, which is the feeling of being there and not here. It's like looking a landscape through a window frame and ignoring the frame. You feel as if you are there. That's an example from Lee 2004. So presence has been shown to increase within augmented mixed realities. These refer to predominantly virtual spaces where physical elements or people are integrated into and can interact with the virtual world in real time and possibly with real repercussions. It's a kind of intermediate realities. Back in 1980, Minsky was the first to introduce the continuum between the real and the virtual environment. And they assumed that the same way that the real environment can be enhanced by virtual elements, like what we are doing at the moment. You are in the UK, I'm in Australia, and we are interacting via this Zoom video call. We have what we call augmented realities, a reality which is augmented by virtual elements. On the other side, we may have a virtual environment which is augmented by real life elements, which is what we call augmented virtuality. And interestingly, some massively multiplayer online role-playing games have been suggested to be in the center of that continuum, and that being more absorbed, and that is the reason that makes them more absorbing. An example of this augmentation of the virtual world, currency exchange within internet games could be such an example. So the same way we can exchange Australian dollars with euros and euros with Linden dollars, which is the currency of the game Second Life, not that popular anymore. I think not that popular after 2011. The same way we can convert the World of Warcraft currency into Aussie dollars, with the currencies in these virtual worlds often functioning like cryptocurrencies, one would say. And we have virtual exchange rates and virtual exchange applications, virtual currency exchange applications. Thank you. Now, aside of one's experience or absorbance by their virtual context, which has been shown to explain 20% of the variance of excessive internet usage, and has been also correlated with the engagement of online health applications and serious games for health, and even educational applications. We have what we call the absorbance by the digital activity, online flow. So for one to be deeply involved in what they are doing online, the continuous maintenance of a dynamic balance between their skills and challenges is also required. So if with yellow we have one's skills and with green we have the challenges of an online application, and this is the level of challenges of an online application, then one's skills need to be slightly lower so that the user feels challenged and that engaged. If their skills are significantly lower, they will feel anxiety and they will disengage. If their skills are significantly higher, they will feel boredom and they will also disengage. However, the more one is practicing using an online application, the more they are improving, and thus to maintain this sense of challenge and engagement, online demands need to match this rate of increase. It is what we call level up in internet games. Aside of the way that one experiences the virtual context and the way they're experiencing their activity within it, which together have been shown to interact and to explain 25% of the variance of excessive internet usage behaviors, and have been also, as I said previously, with presence correlated with the engagement or absorbance of serious games and online health applications. The same way, what is also important is the experience of oneself online. So Tisserand, across the British Channel, has paraphrased Freud and suggested that the avatar is the royal way to the unconscious. Blinka from the Czech Republic 2008 suggested that, with psychometrically supported evidence, that indeed an unhappy user may relate with a happy avatar through feeling that the avatar is themselves, identification. The avatar's needs are their needs. The avatar, which is the figure of representation of the user within the online world, can do there or experience there things that they cannot do or experience in their real lives, repressed desires. And at the end, this persona, this online persona, either an avatar in an online game or the way they present themselves on social media, becomes who they would like to have been. So we have idealization, immersion, identification, and repressed desires, relief of repressed desires, connecting a user with their persona online. We aim to use these categories to profile Australian gamers, and we found that we have three main categories there. The differentiated gamers, they are clearly not their online persona. The identified, they feel like that online persona, but they don't compensate through that, and it's nothing idealized. And the fused gamers, where we have a more intense kind of interaction between themselves and the persona. From considering the same topic, but from a different perspective, the perspective of communication science, Rattan and Dawson introduced the self-presence model. So they said that the user and the avatar connect through what they named as extended self-presence, and psychometrically they supported that, which is the narrative, the storytelling around that persona is me, core self-presence, emotional identification with that persona, and proto-self-presence, which has to do with physiological arousal in one's real life due to the way that persona is online. Yin complemented this work by introducing what is called Proteus effect, which describes how much a user may end up perceiving, thinking, or behaving in their real lives in a way similar, in a way which is defined to some extent by that persona online, by their experience of the online self. Proteus used to be the Greek god of transformations, who was able to take many forms to hide the truth. That was what the myth was saying. Proteus effect in a meta-analysis by Rattan 2020 was shown to have steadily moderate effect sizes when it comes to users' behaviors. And in the work that we did here in Australia, we found that we have three types of gamers. The work referred exclusively to online gamers. 70% of them is gamers who are not affected by Proteus effect. 26% approximately were gamers who were profiled as being emotionally affected by that persona, and only 4% had some effects in their perception and behavior, feeling more confident, for instance. Now, for the journey to continue, evidence from information technology needs to be considered. I'm mindful of the time, I'm sorry. So we have machine learning algorithms getting into the picture. Algorithms, supervised or unsupervised, such as random forests, convolutional neural networks, and LLL algorithms. I don't have the time to explain to them now, but please feel free to ask questions later in the chat. Use the granularity related to big data, volume, variability, velocity, to get one's information and to progressively increase prediction accuracy. They use this progressively increasing prediction accuracy to tailor one's application experience to their individual profile to increase engagement. Algorithms, that way, function as exacerbators, moderators of one's experiences of presence, online flow, and virtual self. Now, are all these things good or bad? These are neither good nor bad in my opinion, but they are important for understanding digital natives' differences regarding their digital media usage, which may have adaptive effects and maladaptive effects. such as digital competence, they need to engage properly with digital media. They need digital inclusion. It's necessary for their lives. And digital resilience, they may find support from these digital media. They may find resources that will help them. Classical example, the LGBTIQ community, where they have YouTube videos where they are coming out. And maladaptive effects such as problematic internet use, see internet gaming disorder as a provisional diagnosis in DSM-5, or gaming disorder as a formal diagnosis in ICD-11. Closing, we are reaching the point to introduce case formulation and research implications on the grounds of this framework, this cyber-developmental framework. My suggestion would be for you to look for the 4 Ps of our formulation within the 4 Ws. What do I mean here? 4 Ps. We have predisposing factors, precipitating, perpetuating, and protective. Predisposing, things that make someone vulnerable to develop a symptom. Precipitating, the triggers. Perpetuating, the maintaining factors. Protective, factors which invite a positive prognosis. We need to look for these things into asking the questions who, where virtually, and when. And not only who, where, and when. So I would strongly prompt you to include in your regular intake assessment questions about one's online context, friends, and how they experience themselves there. It's at least 2 hours of their day, based on stats. Ask them to compare their experience of their real and virtual world, activity, and self. If they are over-engaged with a digital media application, use information about what is engaging for them there to plan changes in their real life. Finally, 4 observations for excessive usage and technological addictions I feel the need to make. As with other addictions, the same with technological addictions, we have the introduction of self-help groups. See Online Gamers Anonymous and NonFap, which is a community to help abusers of online pornography. There's economical and financial interest by the providers of absorbing and or designed to be engaging digital apps. As with every other form of addiction, someone makes profit. I'm sorry for saying that. Where public treatment services are not offered, there is commercialization of therapy. Addictions tend to be secondary symptoms that exacerbate pre-existing psychopathology. In my opinion, they are the problematic solutions of other problems. But this is not a reason for technological addictions not to receive the diagnostic attention and acknowledgement they do deserve. That saying, at the same time, this is not a reason for us to become technophobic, as technological addictions occupy only a small proportion of the variability of digital media usage. 3 questions and 3 ways to continue research-wise. Questions. Is there a conflict of interest between those activated as scholars in the field? Because we have funding from digital media companies. Is there transparency considering the datasets employed to draw conclusions? Is there transparency considering the analytical decisions one takes and how these may influence their findings? I can analyze data in one way and also in another way and end up into different conclusions. 3 ways to continue. Incorporate cyber layer measurements in large cohort studies that target digital natives. We don't have that at the moment, neither in Australia nor overseas. In my opinion, we don't assess presence, we don't assess flow longitudinally, we don't assess one's relationship with their online persona. Second, incorporate multi-method measurement and big data respecting ethical limitations always when studying digital media usage effects. There are some studies here in Australia where we have this kind of multi-method measurements, and this takes advantage, going to my third suggestion, of mobile digital monitoring applications already developing to combine objective data with psychometric data. Please check online, FUNF, Gmoji, Aware, Purple Robot. All these are applications which one can use to monitor their digital or mobile smartphone usage, and they can be reflective in treatment, but also provide information in research. I would like to thank you at this point and to say that we are all sharing the same journey, and it seems to me that this journey accelerates and has been taking us, the field, to new ports. Thank you so much for paying attention to my presentation. Um, I hope you felt more interested into including um, elements of this cyber layer either in your clinical work or in your research work. Thank you so much.